I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And this week, we're going to be looking at the Best Animated Feature category right into December now, where things are really starting to heat up. Next week, I'm going to give my predictions for the Golden Globe nominations before those happen. They took a sort of a one-year hiatus. Now they're back on NBC. I think they're going to be a significant big event, so the first big awards event of the season, so I thought it would be fun to predict the nominations and then see how that ultimately affects our Oscar race and talk about them. Of course, we're going to talk about the Critics' Choice later on, but as we've been doing for the past few weeks, breaking down a different category that I think is going to get nominated at the Academy Awards, at the Oscars. This category, this time around, being the Best Animated Feature. I'll pretty much look at every category in its own separate video or sort of combine certain categories into a video. But the sort of hope is that I can talk about Critics' Choice and Golden Globes and general award season chatter as we start to develop, but also talk about the different individual categories so that you can get an in-depth breakdown of these smaller categories that not a lot of people cover. That's why you come to this channel. You also come to this channel for 75% accuracy on a lot of my predictions. Top 5% Gold Derby, top 0.5%. That's what I predict ultimately for the past 6 years now. But you can still make your own predictions. That's what I ultimately want to do. Give you the landscape, give you my thoughts, give you some interesting stats that you can take away of, and then ultimately make your own predictions. That's what we want to see here at Old's Oscar Countdown. But without further ado, let's jump into the Best Animated Feature category. A very interesting category because it has a lot of certain studios that appear over and over again, but are different than some of the precursors, so sometimes it's difficult to predict and judge. But my first pick is one I'm pretty confident in, and that's going to be Turning Red. Now, I'm not 100% confident that this is going to win for Best Animated Film. That being said, I am pretty confident that it's going to get nominated. Pixar, as a studio, which is the studio behind Turning Red, is just one of the all-time best studios in terms of this category, in terms of getting a nomination, in terms of winning. They have won, out of the 21 years that this category has been around, they have won 11 times. More than half the time, this category goes to a Pixar movie. And really dominated by Pixar and Disney. So Pixar does very well with the wins, but also has the most amount of nominations in total. They've been nominated 16 times in the 21 years, 15 individual years, so more than 70% of the time they get nominated. And let's also not forget that number even jumps higher for years which, they actually have a movie and don't get nominated, because 70% of the time they get nominated, but certain years they don't release a movie that year, particularly early on. So there's almost a yearly occurrence in this category. This year Pixar has 2 movies, Turning Red and Lightyear. I don't have Lightyear in my predictions. Ultimately, I went with Turning Red because when we're talking about Pixar movies, what the Academy really appreciates about them is their originality. When we see past winners, movies like Inside Out and WALL-E, they're original movies that didn't have plans for sequels. And then we see other sort of sequel Pixar movies, things like Cars 2 or 3 or Monsters University or Finding Dory. They actually don't even get nominated at the Oscars. The Academy really appreciates the original, unique creativity that Pixar brings and not the sequels. So when I look at a movie like Lightyear, it's a spin-off of the 4-run sequel now of Toy Story. It doesn't even have the main voice actor, Tim Allen, of the original Toy Story. It's its own little sort of weird stepchild thing. Also sort of bomb at the box office, so has a little bit of a stink there. It could be a possibility just because Pixar is well established, but because we already have a Pixar movie that's original and creative and much more well received in terms of critically in Turning Red, ultimately I think that will be the one that they appreciate more and will be sort of the big one that they have this year. If you don't know the movie, directed by Domi Shi, sort of about her life growing up in Toronto, but of course with a fantastical element about this girl, May, who transforms into a red panda when she turns a certain age, and about controlling that and sort of family connection, intergenerational family. It's a really beautiful story and a great film, and I do think that sort of creativity and the cuteness of turning into a red panda, also sort of linking to a bit of a puberty metaphor, is something that hasn't been done before, and I think that's sort of creativity and ingenuity, and also it's a terrific film. The critical response was so positive. Added on to the fact that this is a Pixar movie, they've just got so many things going for them that it would be stupid for this not to get at least nominated. Then my next pick is actually the movie that I think is going to win, as of right now, this category, which is Pinocchio, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. We've had a bunch of Pinocchio movies this year, and seemingly over the past few years, because it's not really in one companies control. It is this piece of IP that anyone can use, and therefore in this IP-dominated world, everyone will use. But this one from Netflix, I think will have a strong chance at winning this category, Best Animated Feature, because if you look at the past winners in this category that are not Pixar, that are not Disney, they're almost always sort of auteur-driven movies. So you think of George Miller. He's an auteur from the Mad Max movies and Lorenzo's Oil. Then he does a kids movie, Happy Feet. Well, when we're looking at all the other movies, only one's directed by George Miller. People appreciate George Miller, they give the award to Happy Feet. In the same way, Wes Anderson wins for Fantastic Mr. Fox in this category, because it's this sort of big-time live-action director who they've either nominated in the past or they just appreciate their movies. They make an animated film, and it sort of blows all the competition out of the water, because that's just the way the Academy thinks. I think a lot of members think of just this singular auteur director focus, making his sort of passion project kind of a movie in the animation field. Particularly with something like Pinocchio, this is the exact same sort of a thing. If you notice how Netflix is marketing the film, it's Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, not just Pinocchio. So they're really trying to add the fact that this is Guillermo's Pinocchio. And Guillermo has done very well, of course, winning hit Best Director and Best Picture in 2017 for The Shape of Water. Even last year, his follow-up film for The Shape of Water, Nightmare Alley, got a surprise Best Picture nomination. I didn't think a lot of people were predicting that, and it got in. So he's a very well appreciated member of the Academy. I never want to count Guillermo because he's very sort of charming, charismatic, and good in person, seemingly a nice person. Also makes really terrific films. And Pinocchio is getting high positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. Coming into sort of a late December release. Usually animated movies that win in this category have a later release. You know, it's never the animated movie that premiered in February that's going to get the Oscars. It's going to be the one that premiered in November or December, like any other movie, so that helps it going for it. Of course, you have the tour factor of Guillermo and people liking Guillermo, and of course, it's a really great movie in itself. And this is from Netflix, and Netflix is no slouch when it comes to getting animated feature nominations, even just nominations in general. They think that this could actually be a potential Best Picture nominee, and they're campaigning it like that as well. So if they think it can get in for Best Picture, I definitely think it can get nominated for Best Animated Feature, and right now I have it winning. Then my third slot, I'm going to go with Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. A bit of a stranger kind of a movie. It's a sort of part live action, part animated movie, but did qualify for this category at the Oscars after, you know, a little bit of a hubbub with Apollo 10.5 not initially counting, and then Marcel the Shell, I think, sort of riding that wave of backlash and getting in itself. Even though this is a sort of live action movie in terms of looks like it's set in the real world, the main character is this animated character, so I think it qualified, you know, enough for the Academy's rules to get in. And this is another very well reviewed movie, 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, from A24, who already have their hands full with The Whale and Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I think they're going to be really campaigning hard this year because they have significant players in those two movies, so I think Marcel the Shell will sort of ride in that buzz when people are going to all these parties, these A24 things. Not only are they're going to be promoting Everything Everywhere All at Once, but hey, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On is also there as well, and they're going to be promoting that film for animated film and sort of getting that awareness out. So positive film and in terms of critical reception, which you always want to see. But then the other important thing that you want to see in this category is particularly adult-based animated films. Usually when we're talking about, say, the Golden Globes versus the Oscars, the Golden Globes like to go a little bit more general and broad. They'll nominate a movie like Trolls, which is, you know, critically kiddish and not as well reviewed, but they'll nominate it versus, you know, Netflix will nominate a movie like I Lost My Body, this strange, you know, French production that was put on Netflix, which is sort of much more of an odder, stranger, independent animated style versus the traditional American kids movie animations. The Academy usually likes the more independent, the stranger cinema, which is why, you know, G-Kids movies, for example, even, you know, foreign Japanese films will get nominated in the Academy versus when they won't get nominated at the Globes. And I think Marcel the Shell sort of fits that slot for this year. Of course, it is critically well acclaimed from A24, so if you've seen their movies, you know they have a little bit of a brand in the style of being creatively different and a little bit stranger and a little bit more of an odd type of a movie, but still charming and heartwarming. That Marcel the Shell with Shoes On is definitely in that ilk. So because this is a charming, creative kind of a film from a distributor who has done well in terms of getting Oscar nominations, and I think will have a good year this year, plus that critical appreciation, plus that general lean towards adult style focused films in terms of the animation category, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, even though it's a little bit more atypical, I think will get in here. Then my fourth slot, I'm going to go with My Father's Dragon, which is the latest film from Cartoon Saloon, co-produced with Netflix Animation. Now, If you know anything about Cartoon Saloon, you know they're an Irish-based animator, and they've made 4 films, all of which were nominated for Oscars. So I love that track record. This is their latest film. Their past 4 movies got nominated in this category at the Oscars. Therefore, I have some definite confidence that this one will get in. Now, there are some things that have sort of pushed it further down the list. Of course, it's a Netflix co-production, so it's a little bit of a Cartoon Saloon stepchild in that regard. But it's on Netflix, and they'll be campaigning with Pinocchio, and they don't have a lot of Best Picture contenders this year, so I do think they're going to try to pick up a lot of the more ancillary categories as much as possible. So I think they're going to push hard for My Father's Dragon here. This still the style of the film and its approach and kind of mythic storytelling in a way is very much sort of Cartoon Saloon-esque, and that kind of storytelling and style of storytelling has been appreciated by the Academy in the past, so we have a track record which I like. Why I have it so low down on a list is because ultimately it's more child focused, a little bit more for the young ones. It's not necessarily a movie that adults will really love and gravitate towards. It is very much, I think, a kid's movie, and that's not necessarily a bad thing to say about the movie. It's just the fact that the Academy usually doesn't like these types of movies. That's not to say they don't nominate them. It just means that it's not their first choice or preference. That being said, the way it looks, it's sort of hand-drawn approach to animation. The backing behind Netflix, which I think will put some serious money behind it. The reputation of Cartoon Saloon, which is still behind it. They've just got such a great track record that I don't want to count them out, regardless of the sort of more kid-friendly style of the content. Plus, Netflix animation is no slouch either. They've done nominations for Over the Moon and Klaus before, so they know what they're doing in terms of animation. They're not somebody that should be looked down upon. If anything, it should be a benefit. And then in my 5th slot, I'm going to go with The Bad Guys. Now, the 5th slot in any category is always so super difficult because it means that you can't predict something else and you have to sort of make a big, bold prediction on something. It's easy to say Turning Red is going to get nominated, but it's harder to say something like the 5th slot here, The Bad Guys is going to get nominated. But when I was doing my research, I was finding some really interesting correlations between DreamWorks Animation and this category. Of course, everyone knows DreamWorks Animation, Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, you know, they've made some great films over the years. And in this category, the Best Animated Feature category, the 2 really studios that have dominated are Pixar and Disney. But who's third? DreamWorks. And they're pretty close to Disney. They're not too far off. And then there's a huge gap between everyone else. But DreamWorks is a significant studio within this category in terms of getting nominated, winning the first one with Shrek, you know, doing very well, getting a lot of their movies nominated, including even sequels like the 3rd How to Train Your Dragon or the 2nd Kung Fu Panda. And if a DreamWorks movie does not get nominated this year, it will be the longest streak ever that a DreamWorks movie did not get nominated. So if it doesn't get nominated this year, it would be a 4-year difference between a DreamWorks movie getting nominated, assuming one gets nominated next year. So first of all, that's, if you're saying a DreamWorks movie is not going to get nominated, essentially you're saying, okay, I'm going to go against historical precedent, 20 years now of historical precedent. So DreamWorks has this sort of weird pull within the Academy, where even Kung Fu Panda 2 and The Boss Baby, you know, a middling kid-ish film, will still get nominated. And this year they have 2 movies. They have this movie, The Bad Guys, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which conventional wisdom may tell us that, hey, it's being released later, it's also being critically well appreciated, that will get in. I have some questions just because I'm not sure how many people will still like Puss in Boots, who still care about that franchise. Will it make any money at the box office? Whereas I have a movie like The Bad Guys, which is an original movie in the sense that this is the first movie, you know, it's based on a book, but it's not a sequel to a spin-off like Puss in Boots 2 is. And the movie was also critically well appreciated. It did very well at the box office in the pandemic early here in the year when it wasn't necessarily sure that people would go to these movies and see them. It did well. Also, if you've seen DreamWorks' new logo, the bad guys are a part of it. So the way I look at it, I go, okay, the Academy almost always nominates big DreamWorks franchises. They nominated the first Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon. They even nominated Boss Baby. The Bad Guys, at least from DreamWorks' perspective, is going to be their next sort of big franchise. I could see a TV show, I could see 2-3 sequels. I think they're going to really sort of go towards Bad Guys 2 and move that along. And the Academy has been pretty well receiving those sort of first initial entries. So because of that, because DreamWorks is positioning that way as a new franchise, I think they're going to really try to focus a little bit more on Bad Guys versus Puss in Boots. And because it has a sort of charming narrative, generally positive reviews, did well at the box office. I think Bad Guys, and I actually think even the fact that it was released earlier in the year means a lot of these older Academy members who have kids have probably seen the movie 2, 3, 4 times being played throughout the household. I think they're going to be a little bit more aware of the film, and I think that DreamWorks has this odd power and control over the Academy, and I don't want to count them out. So I think one of their movies are going to get nominated. So for this final slot, ultimately I went with the Bad Guys, the more original, the newer kind of a franchise that I think will appeal more to the older members of the Academy. Now into my possible contenders. My first one has to be Wendell and Wild, because that's the movie that's been gnawing at me all season. There's so many things going for it. I mean, this is the director, Henry Selick, the director behind Nightmare Before Christmas. Oh, the category wasn't around back then, but if it was, it definitely would have won. Coraline, which is an Oscar-nominated movie, of course. And this is his latest movie since Coraline, Coraline, which got nominated. So he's a legendary director. Of course, the people involved with it, you have Key and Peele starring in the film. Jordan Peele co-wrote the film. He also produced the film. So there's a lot of Jordan Peele hype there. And then Henry Selick, the talent behind that. But ultimately, the film was a little bit middling in its reviews. It has some fans, but it's a little bit overstuffed. It didn't get the sort of great praise that we maybe hoped for. Netflix didn't really push the movie. It didn't do very well in its Netflix top 10. It sort of came and went. They already have 2 movies in Pinocchio and My Father's Dragon, which I think they're going to campaign more for, which have more critical respect and appreciation, whether it be Cartoon Saloon or whether it be Guillermo del Toro. And the fact of the matter is, if I think My Father's Dragon gets in because of that Cartoon Saloon backlog, and I also think Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is going to get in, do I also think Wendell and Wild will get in another Netflix movie? That would be rare. That'd be historically significant. Why? No studio, not Pixar, not Disney, no studio in the history of this category have had 3 movies nominated in this category from the same year. Pixar's had a couple in certain years, same with Disney, same with DreamWorks, but never 3. So if you're predicting Wendell and Wild and My Father's Dragon and Pinocchio, you're going against historical precedent, and you're saying 3 of those 5 slots will go to a Netflix movie. That sort of hesitates me a little bit. And then I start to go, well, why is Netflix pushing Pinocchio so hard? But then they didn't really do that with Wendell and Wild. They sort of came and went. The reviews aren't as good. Yes, the talent is behind it, but they've also got these other 2 movies, and instead, are they really going to push for Wendell and Wild? It's been gnawing at me because I'm not sure. The big thing going forward ultimately would also to be the stop motion. The fact this is a stop motion movie, it's taken a long time to make. You can see the sort of craft that's being put into it. The Academy loves stop motion movies. I mean, Laika almost always gets nominated, even for their poor movies, something like Missing Link. But then I also go, well, we already have stop motion in Pinocchio. Do we really want another stop motion? Will it really be that special to have another stop motion Netflix movie to get in? I'm not sure. I think the Academy will want different types of animation, so they'll get the traditional American one in Turning Red, they'll get their sort of unique indie one in Marcel the Shell, they'll get the stop motion in Pinocchio. So there's too many things, I think, like Wendell and Wild's spot within the 5 has already sort of been taken up by other movies, and it's been gnawing at me because I'm not sure it should sort of make sense to get in. I just don't have that feeling that it will. And then my final possible contender is going to be Strange World, the movie you've probably seen in a bunch of headlines over the past few weeks, the latest Disney animated movie, which Disney Animation as a studio for the past 10 years have released 9 movies. All of them have been nominated except for one, Frozen 2. Now, think about that. For the past 10 years, all of their movies get nominated except for one. That's an even better track record than Pixar within the past 10 years. So we thought, hey, Strange World, from the director of Raya and the Last Dragon and Big Hero 6, 2 movies that also got nominated in a November release. This should be an automatic lock for a nomination, right? Well, I don't think it will be. Even though Disney Animation has that track record, those movies are usually quite good. Strange World is a box office bomb. It's expected to lose, over $150 million for Disney. It just didn't work. The critic reviews weren't positive either. Very middling. It's got the worst cinema score for a Disney animated movie in history. People just aren't resonating to it. People aren't showing up to see the movie. And the articles being written and the buzz and the hype around it aren't the quality of the film, but are, man, this is a huge box office loss for Disney. Has Disney lost their fastball? That's what is being talked about instead of the actual quality of the film. So then I went back and I thought, well, Connor, does that matter? Does it matter that there was a box office bomb? I'm sure there's been box office bombs that have been nominated in this category before. And yes, there have, but it's pretty rare. I could only really, in my opinion, calculate 2 true box office bombs. Missing Link in 2019 and Treasure Planet back in 2002. And the missing link side, you could say, well, it had the stop motion factor, it won the Golden Globe, they really campaigned that movie heavily, there is a level of craftsmanship that is appreciated within Missing Link. Strange World, its sort of classic comparison, I think, would be Treasure Planet, another sort of adventure movie aimed more at boys, I'd say, that got nominated. But it's also, I think, worth noting that the year before that there were 3 nominations. Then in 2002 there were 5 nominations. Then in 2003 there were 3 nominations. They sort of went back and said, "Oof, we should go back to 3 nominations instead of 5." There weren't really a good group of 5 nominations there because they had to nominate a movie like Treasure Planet, which seemed like they didn't like. So I thought that was telling that they went from 3 to 5 in Treasure Planet year to back to 3. So that maybe seeing in their eyes that maybe the Treasure Planet nomination was maybe a bit of a mistake. So it's rare in general to get a box office bomb to get nominated in this category. So if you're predicting the history of Disney animation, but with sort of middling critical reviews, poor cinema score, box office bomb, I think this movie's going to come and go, and Disney this year actually, I think, will just not get a nomination aside from, of course, Turning Red in the Pixar connection. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this category. It's a tough one because there's certain movies I haven't talked about. Puss in Boots could surprise you or get in, or maybe you're a big Lightyear fan. Maybe you think that movie's going to get in because of the Pixar background. But these are my 5 predictions. I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. And stay tuned to Friday this week, where I'll be giving my predictions for the Golden Globe nominations before they come out on Monday. And I'm going to be giving my reactions and sort of predictions and thoughts based on that. But I'll be giving my predictions for the Golden Globe nominations this Friday. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that video. But until next time, stay tuned.